Let's roll. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of 2025. Everybody excited about bonsai tonight? We're going to be talking about pots tonight, all about pots and repotting. And we have a lot of new folks, and so they're interested to learn. And we have some folks that brought some trees, so we're going to do some repotting in our little mini workshop after we get done with this. But first, we're going to cover some of the things related to the club. So if you are new, it'd be great if you just stood up and told us your name and where you're from and what you're interested in. Oh.
Hi. I'm Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Nice to meet you, Sean.
Columbus originally, and been living in North Side in Cincinnati for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just sort of beginning and just kind of getting into bonsai.
Nice.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
I'm Brian. I live in Newport, and I'm an absolute beginner.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was telling him earlier, we have a bunch of folks that live right in that northern Kentucky area, so we'll have to do some things.
Hello, I'm Jason, a new member. My family got me a bonsai tree for Christmas, so looking to continue to keep it alive.
And it's that one in the little cardboard box there?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Bird Davy icon.
Oh,
Spikes.
Bird Davy ficus. That's nice.
My name is Tim, and this is my wife, Jen. We did a lot of outdoor gardening for years, but recently we started planting some trees in the house. That is our sad little guy right there. That was one of the reasons why we decided to come here, because I was telling people, like, not only do I want to kind of get part of the club and flex my head, but I'm looking to find some mentors. Nietzsche Obi-Wan, because
Yes.
we got so enamored with that little tree, despite it being sad right now, it didn't look that bad at that time. That we've also bought some other trees, so we're starting this like little menagerie of all these cute little trees, and we don't want to do that. We would like to go with
They're like those potato chips you can't have it for.
Yeah.
yeah, we learned that with pugs too. House full of dogs.
Welcome.
I'm Sarah from the West Side. My daughters gave me this for my birthday. I'm interested in trying something new.
Yeah. Awesome. Welcome. Anyone else? I think that's it. Well, it's nice to see everybody. So, we haven't had a meeting since November, and we did have our Christmas party at the 1st of December. So, nice to see everyone again. We do have somebody on the board that is, for some reason, moving to Minnesota where it's hot. And so we do have an opening on the board for the VP of Marketing. So this person would be procuring and distributing marketing materials like signs and posters, like these things that I've done here, getting in contact with the media when we do our shows, and just working on general advertising and communications. We're also looking for new ways to advertise the club for growth. And so that person would be in charge of doing that. So who is ready to do that? Any hands?
One of the new guys.
Any hands? Yeah. Yeah. John?
Who has the skills to do that?
Who has the skills to do that? You got to be like Facebook and Instagram and be a people person and be able to call.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Well, I will talk to you after the meeting and get your signature in blood.
Thank you.
All right, we got some great things coming up. This Saturday is our Yamadori outing. If you don't know what Yamadori is, that is the Japanese term for going out in the wild and digging up a tree to bring home and turn into bonsai. It's the Saturday in Crescent Springs, Kentucky, from 9 to 1. So if you are a member and you would like to sign up for that, please go to the website, log on, and you'll see that on the calendar, and you'll be able to sign up. It's $30, and you'll get to walk away with a tree of some kind. I've got a list of the trees here coming up on a different slide. Saturday, March 1st is the first Saturdays at the Crone. If you don't know what that is, we meet on the first Saturday of the month, at the Crone Conservatory, and we all bring a tree, something bonsai related to work on, and we sit in the bonsai room, chat about bonsai, and talk to Crone guests who come in and are interested in learning more about bonsai. It's a lot of fun. We're there from 10 to 2 on the first Saturday of the month. So registration for that is on the volunteer page on the website. So if you're interested, come on down for that. It's a good time.
Good place to find a mentor.
Yes. Yeah, and get a lot of free advice about whatever you happen to bring to work on. The next meeting is March 20th, and the workshop is March 22nd, and it's all about penjing. And if you don't know what penjing is, it is tray landscapes. That's what penjing means. And I have this cool book if anybody wants to look at what penjing looks like. There's some pretty awesome little how-tos and some amazing pictures of some really cool stuff. So we're going to be doing that. Marion Duhamel is coming from Canada to teach this to us. And we aren't quite sure on the price yet, but we will have packages that have all of the materials that you'll need that we'll be selling. And I'm not quite sure what the workshop will cost yet, but we're thinking $75 to $100, and then $100 to $125 for the package. Now, you can also source those separately if you want to, and I'll provide info on that as well. John.
Just real quick on the packaging.
You have to come up and talk.
Just really quick on the packaging. It's basically going to be a bring your own tree or supplies workshop. We will have available packages of trees, a dozen Chinese elm for roughly about $30, $35. And then there's also going to be the same thing with a kit. You'll get like a 6 to 9 inch granite slab, some moss, some muck, and another dozen elm trees. So you can buy as many as you want of the trees in packaging, or you can buy the kit as a package. The kit will be, like Phil said, about $125 plus or minus a couple of bucks. But it'll have everything you need for the workshop. Otherwise, you'll be able to source your own material. And if you have any questions about what may not work, you can reach out to Phil or myself, and we can help you out with that.
What's your last name again?
It's spelled Duhemel, I believe. She is the, I don't know how to pronounce it. She is the, she works at the Montreal Botanical Gardens, and she's in charge of their penjing exhibit, and she studied under Bjorn when he was living in Tennessee. What's that?
I think he was asking your last name.
Oh, my last name? I'm Davis. Yeah, it's Marianne.
Marianne.
Yeah, there might not be 2 N's in there. I'm not sure. I was close, right?
Duhamel, yeah. I'm super looking forward to this because it's really neat and some of these. So if you want to come take a look at this, be my guest. A lot of neat stuff in here. I'll just leave it up here for whoever wants to take a look. Yamadori outing I already talked about. It's on a 20-acre farm in Crescent Springs. It's going to be cold, so if you're coming, please dress accordingly. There's a lot of good stuff on the property, black walnut, oak, ash, box elder, catalpa, John, but you got tons of those in your yard, so you don't care. Mulberries, common junipers, red cedars, maple, buckeye, honeysuckle. There's some amazing honeysuckle over there with huge roots and gnarly looking stuff, so that's what I think I'm gonna dig. So if you haven't signed up, $30 a person on the website.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
Please bring boots. Please, it is my stepmom's farm, so please bring boots. It is going to be muddy. There are 2 creeks on the property that converge, so it tends to flood, and all the rain we had last weekend, it is a muddy mess, and then with the snow on top of it. Yes, so please dress appropriately because it will be absolutely,
You can wear your hip waders, Steve.
almost could, absolutely.
Coming up at the Crone right now through April 20th is Emerge, which is a lot of bulb flowers. So it's a beautiful exhibit, and if you haven't been to the Crone lately, it would be a great time to go and visit. And then we have the butterfly show coming up starting May 10th. And of course, we always need volunteers for that on Wednesdays and Saturdays. It's kind of like the first Saturdays where you sit in the bonsai room, work on a tree or something that you brought, and chat with folks about bonsai. It's always a lot of fun, and it runs a long time through August. So we need somebody, like at least one person on a Wednesday and a Saturday that whole time. What the society gets out of this is free usage of the crone for some of the things that we do. So it's got great value to us as a society. What's that?
We get some new members occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally. All right, we have bonsai beginners workshops, and I know some of the new folks in here would be interested in this. We have the 3 dates already set up. We've got April 12th, July 26th, and October 25th. And of course, we always need volunteers to help with this. Each of the classes is 26 folks, and we really need around 10 volunteers to help with the classes. Volunteers come in from 12 to 4. Usually we end up a little bit earlier than that. But it's a great time because you get to work on somebody else's tree. And, you know, if you break a branch or something, oh, well. But yeah, you get to impart your knowledge on somebody who's just getting started in bonsai and help them to understand and enjoy it.
If you've taken the class, you're qualified to volunteer for it.
Yes. Yes, if you paid attention in class. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about anything we just talked about? Volunteer. We need volunteers. All right, now the fun stuff. We're going to talk about bonsai pots. For those of you who are new, and even some of the folks who have been doing this for a while, the pot is an integral part of your entire bonsai. So if I look at my tree that I brought here, this is just in a mica grow pot, right? Doesn't look that great. And this isn't really a good pot for this tree if I'm going to do something with it like show it or I want to display it at my home. So we're going to talk about all the things that make a pot great and how to select a pot for your tree. This might be too loud. So why, anybody want a chance to guess as to why we use special pots for bonsai? I mean, do bonsai trees need a special pot? No, doesn't really matter as long as it's in a pot. But there are some things that a bonsai pot provides that you don't get from regular plastic grow pot that you get at the nursery. It enhances the design aesthetic of your tree. And it helps to balance its appearance. So you've got your tree and what's sitting on it, like the root and the base and what's anchoring it to the earth is that pot. And so you want something that's complementary to your tree and really helps the overall view of your tree. In addition to that, it provides excellent drainage. If you look at this pot, lots of drain holes. Bonsai, because they're growing in a pot, they need to have great drainage, otherwise you will have problems with root rot and things like that. And they also have wiring holes to help you secure your tree into the pot. Because you're in a pot, the chances of your tree falling over, it may be top heavy, you don't have a lot of weight at the bottom to hold that tree in there. You may have varmints in your yard that are going to be knocking your trees over. We have problems with squirrels and chipmunks, so always a good idea to wire your tree in. So these have holes for that wire. So why do we use shallow pots? Anybody want to care to guess why we use shallow pots if you're new? No guesses? Well, it's visually unobtrusive. If we looked at my tree over here, the pot's pretty hefty. It's not really the right pot for that tree. It looks heavy. So we go with something that's much less visually obtrusive so that your focus is more on the tree. And it helps keep the tree small by limiting its growth potential. So if you plant a tree out in your yard, it has pretty much unlimited growth potential, right? The roots can go as far as they want to and help the tree to get much larger. So because we're keeping the roots small in this tiny little pot, the tree has much less potential for growth, which is really what helps keep it small. So now let's talk a little bit about pot materials. There are a lot of different materials that you can make pots out of. We have plastic pots that are typically like our grow pots that we put our beginners' trees in because we're going to be changing the pots a lot. The trees keep growing. We have mica pots. Let's see, I don't think I have. Aside from this pot, this is a mica pot. And it looks like it's ceramic, but it's actually made out of compressed mica, the mineral. So it's pretty indestructible. It is great for growing your tree in because it will withstand all of the elements, freezing, and everything like that. And they're much less expensive than ceramic pots. So lighter, less expensive. If you drop it, it's not going to break. Oh, John said you can drill holes in it, which you can. Yeah, you can drill holes in all of them, but it's a lot easier with a mica pot. You just use a regular drill. You don't have to worry about breaking your pot. So you want to choose your pot material based on the stage of your tree. If you've got a tree that you're just developing or it's new, you're just going to want to put it in an inexpensive pot while it's growing so that you can keep changing the pot. You're not going to display it. It's just going to be in your garden for a number of years because, of course, everything with bonsai is slow. So having to change pot really all the time can get expensive. Our friends at Reminiscent Herb Farm, Dick, he doesn't put anything in a finished pot until he's getting ready to sell it. So what does he say? What does he say about that? He says he's got some kind of saying about it, doesn't he? Something just along the lines of, I'm not putting it in an expensive pot if I'm going to change it.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, the only time that he really is a stickler about it is if we're going to show something, and then it'll kill him because I will do it during the right season, and that just physically hurts him.
Yeah. So now's the time of year to pot as well. So since we are thinking about the fall show, and I know I mentioned this in the last newsletter or the previous newsletter, now is the time to start thinking about what pot you're going to show in the fall show because it's repotting season. So you have to think about what my tree is going to look like in 6 months when I'm ready to put it in the show. It's not great on the tree to repot when it's hot outside, when the tree's not actively growing, and so we want to figure out what pot we want to show it in right at the beginning of the year when we're doing our repots. So ceramic pots, there's a lot of difference in the pots as well. There's low-fired and high-fired pots, and we're going to talk about those. Inexpensive pots. I think this pot was like $15, and this is what they call a low-fire pot. They are made from a different type of clay than the high-fire pots, so they don't totally vitrify when they're fired. They feel kind of rough on the inside, and they make kind of a clunky sound when you clink on them. So if you use this pot, you would only want to do this indoors. This pot will not withstand the elements. This will 100% break if you let it freeze. Now high-end pots are made from high-fired clay, so they're waterproof and they're far more durable than some of these other pots. Let's see if I've got a good example. Well, this is a high-fire pot. So these are fired at much higher temperatures than the low-fire pots for a much longer period of time, which means that the clay is completely vitrified. It's totally waterproof. If you feel it, it's very smooth. And when you ding on it, kind of sounds like a bell. You can tell that it's fully solidified in the clay.
Are they, like, the novice, are they labeled that way?
No. No, that's why we're talking about it. Because I think, well, I've been in the club for like 8 years, and I don't think we've ever talked about pots or potting and how to choose a pot for your tree. So I thought this would be a good opportunity since it's potting season.
The low fire pots are basically an earthenware,
Yeah.
and that is not fired at a very high temperature, so it doesn't vitrify.
Right. So, like I said, the low-fired pots sound really clunky when you tap on them, and they're really rough to the touch versus,
If you wet them,
yeah, they're not waterproof either. The only part of this pot that's waterproof is where the glaze is. Another thing is there's rough, but of course this pot is a high-fired pot, but it's very rough because it has grog in it. Now, does anybody know what grog is in pottery? It's ground up fired pot material. It's fired clay that's been ground up and mixed in with the new clay to give it added strength. So some of these, like this pot, even though it's high fired, it feels really rough inside because it's high grog content. And we dinged on some high fired pots, like this little tiny guy has a great sound. So you can tell that's a nice high fired pot. And this one, if you feel it, it's really smooth, so we can pass that around.
You're always going to feel a little bit of grit on the inside. It's not completely smooth. You don't want it to be completely smooth, and you don't want it to be glazed on the inside because a slime will develop between your root system and that
glaze, because it's completely impervious to
anything.
anything.
You don't want to see that. You don't want to feel it perfectly smooth.
So why do really good bonsai pots cost so much? So if we take a look at this pot, which Stephanie donated to me, it's $250. Now, this is a pretty inexpensive pot as far as bonsai pots go. Yeah, for a pot that size, that's pretty inexpensive. But there's a ton of artistry that goes into making bonsai pots. The people that create these by hand have a ton of expertise, and they have years of training, even decades, especially in Japan where a lot of the really high-end pots are made. And a lot of local potters in the U.S. have a ton of experience. They've been making pots for a long time.
And we've got quite a few here in our greater Cincinnati area that
Yeah.
do an amazing job.
Yeah. And they're not mass produced, so they take a really long time to make. Just a single pot that a potter makes, if they're throwing it on a wheel, it's probably faster than if they're molding it or doing slab process. It takes a minimum of 3 firings to make an unglazed pot and 5 to 10 to make a nice multi-glazed pot like this. And so that's hours and hours in the kiln. High-fired pots, this is an unglazed pot. This probably spent 18 hours in a kiln at about 2,500 degrees. And this is a really nice, expensive pot, which we'll talk about in a minute. So well-known makers' pots fetch a premium, and especially antique pots. So like this pot, for example, anybody want to care to guess how old this pot is? This pot's probably about 40 years old. It's never been used, but it's by a known maker in Japan, and it's worth probably about $600, $700. So how do you know when you're buying a pot if it's worth something? So maybe you're like, I'm buying this pot from Stephanie here, and it's $250. Am I getting ripped off or what? I trust Stephanie, so I know that I'm not. But if you look on these pots, they have a chop or a hanko, and I'll get a different pot because you can see it better. I like my big pot here. So this one has a good sized chop right here, which is the maker's mark, right? This tells you who made the pot, and there are some resources online that you can use to look up the pot. Now this is actually upside down. This actually goes this way. JapaneseBonsaiPots.net has a list of not just Japanese but also Chinese makers, and there are Chinese makers that go back 500, 600, 700 years. They've been making pots. Same with Japanese pots. So this Japanese pot was made in Tokoname, which is a city in Japan that is all clay artists. So that's all they do there is make clay and bonsai pots and other clay materials. And this pot was made by Johann in probably the 1970s, because Johann is no longer a maker. He passed away, and his family did not have somebody to take over the art from his family. So this is a pretty valuable pot.
And that's from a mold.
Yeah, so this pot's not hand thrown. All of the odd shaped pots are typically made with molds. There's a really good video from Bonsai Empire on YouTube that shows pottery making. In Tokoname, it follows several potters and shows you the entire process of how they make the pots. It's super interesting. So I'd recommend everybody watch that if they're interested in learning about how pots are made. The American Bonsai Ceramics is for American makers. Now, this pot's probably about 40 years old or as well. At the time, it cost only 20 bucks, but I think now it's worth a little bit more. I couldn't find this maker, Delicata, anywhere, but it's made in the U.S. by someone who thought they could do well at pots. It's a nice little pot. This pot, anybody care to guess how much this pot would cost? This tiny little guy? No, not that much. It's worth about $150. This pot was made in Japan by Cherry Star, and they're out of business now. So this is another older pot. So this pot's worth, it cost 150 bucks when it was new, but I think it's probably worth $300 now for just this tiny pot. And this really tiny guy, anybody want to care to guess what this pot cost? Being just tiny little thing? $250. No, that's too much. When it was new, it was about 80 bucks. So, yeah, you could spend $100 on a tiny little pot like that.
What would be grown in that tiny little thing?
$4,000 tree.
Yes. Yes.
I have a couple $2,000 and $3,000 trees in that size.
Yeah.
Can't see it at the nursery.
So when you take the beginners class, we talk about tree sizes. There's a whole bunch of different tree sizes based on the size of the tree. So this would be probably a mame size pot, which would be a little tiny tree, kind of like yours over there, but in a little wee pot.
I thought we were gonna try and get that tree.
Well, I could if I cut it off right here. So the pot that you pick for your tree should complement the character of your tree. And so there's a lot of nuanced things about that we're going to talk about. One of them is tree characteristics. Now, I don't know who came up with the way to determine tree characteristics. They're, I don't know, maybe sexist. But they're masculine and feminine. Those are how the trees are identified in their qualities. So masculine trees have sharp edges, they have thick trunks, they have heavy branches, a lot of dead wood, and dark or really rough bark. So a good example of that would be Japanese black pine. They have heavy trunks, they have really gnarly bark, they have big bases and really heavy branches and interesting needle structure. Now on the other side, feminine trees are kind of rounded silhouette with a thin trunk, dainty branches, probably flowering, and smooth or light colored bark. So my tree here, I would consider this a feminine tree. So masculine and feminine is very nuanced. There are really masculine trees like this Japanese black pine over here. I think that's Evan Luce's tree. That tree belongs to one of the members that he showed in there. But you can see it's in a plain pot, kind of an angular pot, even though it's round. It's got hard edges at the top and the bottom. Really masculine planting. The second tree is the Japanese black pine as well, but it's in a literati style, which means it has some feminine characteristics with the sweeping trunk and the way that the branches are. So I call that like semi-feminine. On the right side, or actually semi-masculine. So on the right side, you have a completely feminine tree, which is a, hold on, gotta get a drink.
Looks like a tried maple, or
I think it's just Japanese maple.
is it?
Yeah. It's a Japanese maple. It's got,
The green is a trident maple.
yes. So it's got really fine branches. It's really kind of nice and wispy. And it's in a very feminine pot, which is like this powdery blue color. It's curved. It's nice looking.
So when you get a tree, do you define it? Like the one that's second from the left. So let's say it grows and then you just
That
kind
one?
of make it look like that?
Yes, yes. So this tree probably started out growing straight up, and over time it was bent into that shape. And that's a specific style of tree. So there are about 25 styles of tree, and we'll kind of cover some of those in the beginner's class. So you can kind of get an idea of how to make your trees
So
look.
it's not like on its natural
Right,
growth like that?
right. And then this what I call a semi-feminine tree is a trident maple, which is a similar kind of tree to the very feminine one, but it's got a massive gnarly trunk. And so it's in what I would consider probably the wrong pot for it. It's in an unglazed pot, which I think kind of detracts from the tree. So it could be in more of a little bit more feminine pot, maybe of a color. But ultimately, it's what you like to put your tree in.
But.
Yeah, but
if it is a conifer of any type, it should never be in a glazed pot, because it's a masculine tree no matter how you shape it. If it is a deciduous tree, no matter how you shape it, it is a feminine tree, and it should be in a glazed pot.
yeah,
So those are your two beginning defining factors. Is it deciduous, or is it some type of an evergreen? And you have to remember that redwoods, there's only one variety that's actually evergreen, and the others are deciduous, but they reproduce with a cone, and that makes them a conifer. So you do need to know what your plant material is before you decide to pick out your pot.
right. So that's why this tree, definitely a feminine tree, but it's in a masculine pot. So that's really not the best choice for that tree.
And if your ultimate goal is to show your tree, and you put that feminine tree in a masculine pot, and if someone is judging and they're seriously judging your tree at a show, you can have the most wonderful tree in the world, but if the pot is inappropriate, that's going to take a lot of points away from your tree.
So out of curiosity, bald cypress would be considered a conifer and a masculine
That's
tree?
right.
Yes, I'll give you this, so
No,
if you want to
you're
interject
fine.
comments,
No, I-
we
I
can
have
hear
to
it on the,
interject a
we
few
hear it on the
things.
live stream. So, just like trees, pots have masculine and feminine characteristics. So, a masculine pot is an angular, square, rectangle, hexagon with no embellishments, is very minimal looking. Severe straight lines, angular edges, like this isn't curved off or anything. Now this has got a little bit of rounding here, but it's still a pretty masculine pot. And unglazed, earth tone, and if it is glazed, it has to be earth tones or dark colors.
Black.
On the other hand, feminine pots, graceful, oval, round, ellipse, curved edges. Feminine pot, glazed, it's a nice color. It's very smooth, no hard lines or severe edges. The lip here is rounded off, and so that would be considered a feminine pot. A lot of them have decorative designs. Now this pot has some really cool motifs on it that are carved into it, but because this is in a matte dark glaze, still considered a masculine pot, even though it has some embellishments. This pot, definitely a feminine pot. It's a nice glaze, it's very shiny, it's round, it's got some nice curves to it, a nice lip on the edge, so really nice looking little feminine pot.
Question.
Yes?
What if you have a sharp angled pot with
If it's a color, you'll be okay. So I see what you brought there. That's a very masculine pot. Even though it's glazed, it's a dark glaze.
Square corners.
Yeah. So I would say that's semi-masculine. In that you're going to put your very feminine tree in.
Yeah, I'm just going off the colors that the leaves are and the blue.
Yeah.
That's how I was choosing them, so.
It's a nice pot, though. You should go with this one. Although I think it's too small for that tree. So, like tree selection, pot selection is very nuanced. You can have a super feminine pot like this one here on the side, which has lots of curves and it's white and it's got a lot of embellishments and drawing on it. Very nice pot. That would be a great pot for your tree. A little further along, and this is a glazed pot, but it's got a little bit more severe edges. Still rounded though, still got a nice little rounded line through the middle. So I call that a semi-feminine pot. On the masculine side, we've got plenty of examples of masculine pots. This is very angular. There's no embellishments. It's all straight, hard lines, and it's unglazed. This pot is unglazed, but it's got some rounded edges. It's a little bit smoother looking, so I call that a semi-masculine pot. So that would be a good pot like for the literati tree that we saw, where it's a black pine, but it's curved, so it's like a semi-masculine tree in a semi-masculine pot. So how do we figure out what size pot to use? Well, you can use your tree's measurements to kind of give you a rough idea, but still in the end, it's got to fit all your roots into it, right? So typically oblong pots are going to be about 2/3 as wide as the tree is tall. So I was thinking about using this pot for my tree there, but I think it's probably going to be too big, and I think this one's probably going to be too small, but I'll have to get it out there and see. But as far as the size goes, Is that 2/3? I think it's a little short. So this is the original pot that I wanted to use, and I think it's about right. Anyone agree? About 2/3? If, do you have a question? Yeah.
Yes, when you talk about size of pot, you talk about the, as her term of showing the bonsai, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that when we're in the process of trying to grow the bonsai to
Mhm.
the fullest.
Right. You would just use an inexpensive pot. If you're planning to just keep it growing until it gets to where you want it to be, to the point where you want to show it, go with an inexpensive pot. Yeah. Mica pot, yeah, training pot, something like that.
Gotcha, thank you.
So square or circular pot should be about a third as wide as the tree is tall. And for wider trees, if you've got a huge canopy on your tree, but the base is pretty small, you use the size of the canopy versus the height of the tree. So as far as the depth goes, you don't want it to be deeper than the width of the tree trunk at soil level. So my tree here at soil level is probably about 3 inches. So I don't want a pot that's deeper than 3 inches. So this pot would be way too deep. The pot that it's in now is too deep. So that's why I've selected a pot that's a lot shallower than that tree.
Can you say that again? So you don't want it as deep as?
You want it to be no deeper than the width of the trunk at the base.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Sid.
What about when it comes to like cascade pots?
So Cascade's a special exception because you need a pot that's tall. This is a Cascade pot, so it's much taller because your tree's going to be hanging over the edge of the pot. So in order to show it correctly and everything, you don't want to.
Are there any other specific rules for cascade pots?
If there are, I don't know what they are. Stephanie might know, might have some thoughts, but she has to use a mic.
All right. Okay, so what you want, is it on?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Check. 1, 2.
As long as it's just quiet.
There you go.
There you go. All right, what you want to do with the Cascade pot is it's all about how you're going to display it. Because a lot of times we have a Cascade pot that's actually displayed on a stand, and we want to see that Cascade come further over. We're looking at, when we're sizing, how wide and how wide we want the top to be is going to be based upon your crown that's coming out, not this whole long branch or the body of the pot, or the body of the tree. But it's just this knob, this beginning knob at the top. And then it really is according to how severe your arc is. It's how tall the pot should be. And you can stay with the semi-cascade, you can stay with a cascade, which is generally going to be tall and skinny, but you never want it to be so tall that that branch doesn't at least have the aesthetic ability to come to the bottom of the pot.
Yeah.
So you do at least want it to touch the bottom, not
Correct.
touch.
Pretty darn close.
Yeah, so typically semi-cascade, the branches don't go below the bottom of the pot, whereas a cascade, they do go below the bottom of the pot. Now, if I had a cascade that was like this long and I put it in this pot, I would have to get a stand that was that tall to display this. So you could do it, but the stand is then becomes a part of your entire display.
Yeah,
that
and
same
the
one?
pot has to be heavy enough to support the tree. If you have a heavier tree that has much more arm,
Feel how heavy that
and you
pot
don't
is.
have enough
Compared
depth,
for its size, it's pretty heavy, isn't it?
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
And that's what you notice in most cascades. They are a thicker pot, or they're going to be very deep.
You hang on to that. Here, push that button.
I did.
Oh, okay. You're good. So when you size the pot, there's some functionality involved. You want to make sure that your roots have a little bit of wiggle room. You want at least an inch or so around all sides of the roots. So the tips of the roots, you want a good inch between those and the outside edges of your pot. You've got to have a little bit of room for it to grow and to expand with new roots, because those are really the roots that we're trying to develop when we're building a tree, is the fine feeder roots. And so we need to have a little bit of room for those to expand in the pot. So let's look at some examples. Masculine, feminine, tree pot, what do you think? Totally 100% masculine. So that's a pretty nice tree. What do you think about that? Beautiful tree, but ooh, totally wrong pot for that tree. That's a fabulous tree, but that pot just really detracts from that tree. What do you think about that? It's in kind of a bluish pot. Do you think that tree would be improved with a different pot? Steve says no.
But it's flowering.
Yeah.
It's got really dark
Very
cracks.
square edges.
Yeah, it's got really square edges. I think that tree would be better in an oval pot. It could stay the same color, that color's fine, but an oval pot would be.
I believe the selection for this pot was done based on the fact that it's blue and it has the embellishments on the feet that give it the semi-feminine, whereas the trunk is very rough barked and jagged.
Mhm.
I think that may have been the design choice of whoever potted this tree up.
Could be,
So
but
it's not
flowering
necessarily a wrong
trees,
decision. It's
flowering
just-
trees always feminine.
Is that pot a little too small for that tree?
Yes, I think it might be. It could be a little bit wider, not as deep maybe,
Yeah.
and oval. I think that tree would look a lot better in that different pot. How about this one? Super feminine tree in what kind of pot? Pretty masculine pot. Do you think that tree would be improved with a better pot? 100%. Pot that's got some color to it. Actually, I kind of like the white color. It's not too bad, but the pot is just really severe, really angular.
Seems like the base was meant to go with that tree though. That's correct.
Yeah. What would you do to change that pot if this was your tree? What do you think would look good? Color? Blue, green, yellow, orange, red? Steve?
Yeah, it almost has to be red because otherwise you get a different color.
Yeah, it would clash, yeah. Yellow, I think yellow would be good.
Yeah.
Blue,
Slab and pinching.
put it on a slab for Penjing. Yes, totally. What about that? That's a really nice tree, very feminine tree in a very feminine pot. I like the color of the pot. The shape is good. It's about the right size.
Sure.
Yeah, it's deep enough. Yep.
So, but it's the wrong color.
No, I think that blue is good. Yeah. It makes you think of water,
Eggshell.
right?
Robin Hood.
Steve doesn't like it. Are you colorblind? Well, if this was Steve's tree, we know it wouldn't be in a blue pot.
Pots like that sell at the farm.
Oh, yeah, he only sells his ugly pots at the sale. So why do we repot? Well, we repot to refresh the soil. The the soil will break down over time because bonsai soil is made up of typically pumice, lava, akadama, which is fired clay, and they all break down over time. So I think my tree was probably repotted maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it's definitely in need of a repot. To also, we talked about earlier, remove excessive root growth. So we want to keep our tree small. So we're going to kind of cut back the roots a little bit, which is for the health of the tree. It helps to reinvigorate the tree and start new growth. And when do we repot? Well, now is the best time of year to repot our deciduous trees. It's early in this. It's really early before the buds have really started to swell. And you should do it every 2 to 3 years. So a lot of people get a tree and they instantly want to repot it. And that typically, unless you know how long the tree's been in the pot, that can be disastrous for your tree. It maybe has only been in that pot for a year, hasn't had a chance to get established, and then you're taking it out, disturbing the roots, and could ultimately kill your tree. So for our little Fukian tea tree over there that looks sad, I would recommend leaving it in that pot until it starts to look better. And maybe in 6 or 8 months, think about repotting it. So, yes. What?
Can't keep my mouth shut.
Okay, go ahead. What?
All right, here's the deal.
Do it.
Do not repot a Fukian tea in the middle of the winter. Do not do any root pruning. Do not do anything other than tip pruning. You repot a tropical when the temperatures are at 80 degrees and are going to be consistently at 80 degrees for at least 6 weeks. That is your initial transplant. So when is that for us? For us, that is mid-June sometimes to mid-September. Generally, first week of July is safe. But you need to do it when it's hot. It needs to be outside. Anything tropical needs to be outside in the heat. It needs a change of barometer, change of humidity daily. It needs moisture. It needs true sunlight. You cannot transplant a tropical right now, period. Even in the greenhouses, we do not. And my greenhouses are the heated house is getting to be 85, 90 degrees right now. We still never, ever transplant until we have real air temperatures at 85 degrees. Just got to throw that out there.
For the record, I did say 6 months
Yeah.
from now.
You did.
So,
But it kind of was sounding like it would have been maybe okay. But I think we need to.
well, but if you look at your
set
tree,
parameters.
if you look at
Right.
the tree and see how sad it's looking
Yeah,
right
it's
now, yeah, now is not the time to repot.
We got it in the mail.
Yeah?
Yeah, we got it in the mail. And when we opened it up, it was like, its roots were already exposed.
Oh, yeah.
So it was kind of like triage, just to kind of get it into something ASAP.
And
Yeah.
that's sometimes what you need to do.
My wife got a bonsai soil from Amazon.
Yeah. I saw the soil, it looked good. Yeah.
Just needs more water.
Yeah.
We got bad advice. That's why we're here too, is because we were reading online and it was telling us.
Oh, they said just missed it.
Yeah.
So, yes. So, deciduous trees, late February through March is about when you want to repot them. Of course, if we're having tons and tons of super cold weather, really, you just have to pay attention to what's going on outside and what the daytime temperatures are getting to be. For evergreens, you want to do them a bit later in the season. Mid to late March through April is around here. Oh, go ahead, turn your mic on.
No.
I saw the face. Come on, I've got to hear it. I got to know what you're
right.
thinking.
What I'm thinking is, forever. We have about the 1st of February to the latter part of March. After that, you have too much new growth. Even in the nursery industry, we're not transplanting after the end of March.
Even for conifers and
We
evergreens?
never, we don't touch them.
Okay.
Yeah. And you just don't want to compound your transplant shock. And with a bonsai, you really want to control your temperatures after you transplant. You should never allow it to freeze again, which is tough. That's why the February to end of March. It needs to be in a well-lit area that is still getting cold in the 30s, but never below freezing, because you're going to do root damage. When you transplant a plant, you open that up, you have a very loose, a very just open, airy substrate that you're planting in. So your roots are going to freeze if they're exposed to those kind of temperatures. I know with a lot of these guys, they run houses, like Mark Fields and Bjorn, they run houses just for transplanting cold material. So it gets into the mid-30s, but never below 34 degrees. Never any warmer than 40 to 45 degrees. So it's tough, That's why our window tends to be February to the end of March. It's easier for us to replicate those kind of temperatures.
And in case anybody's wondering, Stephanie's a professional grower. So
I've been doing it for a little while.
she's been doing it for like a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen them die. We have killed plenty.
Yeah. Everybody, I think
Everybody has killed
everybody here has
plenty.
killed trees. Anybody here not killed a bonsai? Too new? Just wait. So what tools do I need to repot? Well, depending on the tree and the pot, you may need something like this, which is a root sickle. If you have like a bag-shaped pot, like this pot, how it's undercut here, when it gets pot bound, what?
Nothing, you're right. It just drives me crazy to pull them out of there.
Yeah, it's super hard to get your trees out of these. We hate this shape of pot because the roots really grow in there. And so you need something like this, which is a sickle, to cut around the edge to be able to get your tree out of these kind of pots. So I think this is a carpet knife. Works just as well to get down in there. Now this doesn't work for the deeper pots, but it also works, and you pick these up at Lowe's or Home Depot for a few bucks. This is a Japanese tool, a little bit nicer quality, but still functional. You're going to need a root hook. So if you've got a pretty small tree like your Fukian tea back there, you can just use your fingers to kind of loosen the soil around there and work it out, or chopsticks. But a root hook is an invaluable tool for breaking the soil out and not damaging the roots, if at all possible. We've got bamboo chopsticks. John can tell you all about these because he makes them. This is a little bit different design than a standard like food chopstick. These have a beveled tip so that when you are pushing the soil in with these or digging it out, it has a much better chance of pulling the soil out without damaging your roots. Also, they're not sharp. You're going to need to cut the roots. So you need some heavy duty like root shears like this. You can use bypass pruners, something heavy, because there's going to be leftover soil in there, and you don't want to ruin your $90 pair of bonsai scissors by trying to cut roots and leftover pumice with them. So heavy scissors for that. You're going to need to use wire cutters if your bonsai has been wired into the pot. So this tree has lots of wires on the bottom, so I'm going to have to cut those when I pull it out of the pot. You're going to need some wire and mesh to put it back in the pot. So We use this to cover the holes so that the small grain soil doesn't make it through our giant drainage holes and lose our soil. And a soil scoop. Question is, where are my soil scoops? Soil scoops come in all different sizes. They're usually stainless steel. If you're on a budget, you can take a plastic cup and cut it at an angle and make yourself a soil scoop. I like this one because it's got a screen, and so all of the tiny particulates when I'm pulling up my soil kind of get sifted out. You definitely want to kind of clean your soil a little bit and sift it. I didn't bring the full size sifter, but all that dust that's in the soils will adhere to the roots, and it will keep them from taking in moisture. So you need to use like a clean soil that doesn't have a lot of fine particulate in it when you're repotting. Do you have a comment? Sure.
Everybody was sifting their soil in December when they couldn't work on their trees. Right?
Yes. So soil sifter. I didn't bring mine because I don't know where it is. It's my wife. My wife put my stuff away, and now I don't know where anything is. So the actual procedure. You ready to see the procedure? What's that? If anybody wants to help, feel free to come up. Stephanie, I can tell you, no, you're dressed too nicely. You don't really want to help. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut all my tie downs here. So I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm getting rid of this screen as well. Ooh, it's purple. No, you could get purple screen. Now at the top, if I can pull this out, this will be amazing. I'm pulling the wire out. So I've cut the wire on the bottom, and now I got to get rid of it on the top here. What's that? This is a hop hornbeam, which is a native tree. One of the interesting things about this tree is it gets flowers and fruit that looks like hops. So it's like a kind of an upside down cone. So if you're a beer drinker and you know what hops look like, that's why it got its name. I got one out.
This one needs to be cut.
Oh, it's going under here. I don't even know what that one's hooked to. Ooh. Here, let's try to get that one. And this one, I don't even know what this one's attached to. All right, so my tree is free. I don't even know what that's attached to. All right. At least. John, you remember when these were last repotted? It's been more than 2 years. So now I'm going to take my root hook and I'm just going to kind of go around the edge here. I like to put it on a bucket like this because I don't have to like support the tree, but I can get all around the edges and kind of work on getting all the soil out. John, you want to help? You want a hook? So I'm looking at these roots, and some of them are looking kind of dark, like maybe there's a little root rot going on here. So I think it's definitely a good time to be getting this into some new soil. Yes, right in the back. There's some right in the back. That's Stephanie's. Stephanie brought some pots and some supplies. So if you'd like to purchase some soil, she's got, what are they, gallon bags or?
I've got gallon bags and I think two-quart bags that I don't think they're in 1 quart in there because Alex packed the last one. But I've got a couple different sizes too. I have a small size which is great for soaking or mame, and then the larger size is welcome. We call it the medium size.
Different type of bonsai soil?
Different size. Your increment should be relatively similar and, it's just basically, if you wanna call it anything, a booms mix, and it's gonna be equal parts of pumice, lava, and akadama. And it's according to what kind of.
Mike, just.
Your soils are going, the bonsai soil, your basic bonsai soil or Boone's mix is going to be equal parts pumice, akadama, and lava. And it's according how large of a plant or how small of a plant that you are transplanting, whether it should be a small substrate,
as I can.
a medium, or a large, or somewhere in between. So most of us are growing Shohin size, whether we realize it or not. Some a little bit larger, so what we always have on hand is the small and the medium, and that's what I brought. Yes, we're out in Florence, we're a nursery. It's Reminiscent Herb Farm, Nursery and Landscape, that's us.
You should go out there. It's pretty awesome. Yes. Okay.
In that beginner's class, you're supposed to supply the plant that I'm going to use.
Mm-hmm.
I know I got the tools, you're going to send out all that email. But how does this young lady know how much soil to get?
Well,
If I were to purchase tonight,
depends on how many trees you plant, you have, how big of pots. Well, what size pot? What size pot? This size pot or the tiny little pot? Yeah. In the class, you get all the soil that you need. Yeah. I'm going to kind of put it a little further over the edge so I can get a little closer. Stephanie, I'm getting your pots dirty.
You are?
Your new pots. You're going to have to sell them for used at a discount now. Yeah. Yes.
So while you're doing that, so I was wondering, put it in those fancy pots, and then what do you do with them in the winter?
Well, if I'm putting them in a really nice pot, a quality pot, that pot can still be outside in the wintertime, and it will survive the winter, the high-fired pots. Yes, I bury it in my yard. I rake up all the leaves from the maple trees in my backyard, and I kind of build a corral for my trees. I put leaves in them, set them on top of the leaves, and just pack leaves around all of them. Yep.
What's your tip, Andrea, that you got from your dad?
Bury them in. Oh. Wait, you need a mic for this. Yes. Stephanie will.
There.
And if anybody wants to come up and get a closer look, please feel free.
The other side for a little bit.
Okay, so growing up, for those of you that don't know, I inherited a bunch of my dad's trees when he passed away. Growing up, I was not all that interested in the bonsai trees, right? It was like one of those, like, oh yeah, that's that cool, weird thing my dad does. Fine, whatever. But as a teenager, as your father's doing bonsai, he would ask my girlfriends at the time, hey, do you have any old pantyhose that maybe are ripped and have got a runner in them? I'd really like your old pantyhose. I'm like, oh yeah, my dad's the creep guy. No, so he would take pantyhose and wrap the base, like the pot base, in the pantyhose, and then he would bury the pots in the ground, and that's how he overwintered all of his pots. Because the pantyhose around the outside of the pot, so it kept the bonsai soil in, the dirt you're gonna cover over it out, and he did it for 50 years. So that is my tip. Thank you, Phil, or John rather, for pointing that out. But yeah, I literally I just go to the Dollar Tree and buy them for $1.25 because that seems so much more efficient.
Less creepy.
And less creepy.
Much less creepy.
Exactly. And much less creepy. But yeah, so literally I cut them. I usually can get like 4 pot things out of a pair of pantyhose, and I just wrap the base, and then you bury the base in the ground, load it up with dirt. You don't have to worry about the dirt getting on your bonsai soil.
Hold it on the side for you.
And water will run right exactly here.
It is purple.
Remember that guy's
Yes.
Another question about
What's
the
that?
pots. Do you reuse the pots, and is there a method to clean them?
You can, yes. And so let's kind of go through this a little bit. So I'm going to, I've cut the wires. I'm going to check and see if I can easily pull the tree out of the pot. If I can't, I'm going to use my sickle to cut around the edges and until I can get it free from the pot. Could be especially difficult if the tree's been in the pot for a long time. Did you buy one of those from UMAN, one of those?
Which one? The pot or the tree?
The tree that were in the
Scots pine?
The Scots pine, yeah.
Yes.
We bought these Scots pines that were in plastic grow pots. The pots were like a 6-inch grow pot that was like 8 inches deep. And they were so packed with roots that we had to cut the pot off. And then there was no chance of using any of these tools to get the roots out. I ended up using my hose and a pressure washer to dig the roots out of this pot and the soil mix. There was virtually no soil left. It was all just one giant mass of roots. So it took me like 4 hours to just get the roots out. Yes?
Are you intending to get almost all of the soil?
Real quick, back to the question about the pots. If you intend to use the same pot, you're going to want to, after you directly pull it out of the pot, you want to set it aside without disturbing the soil so that you can clean your pot and get it prepped. So to prep your pot, and while we're looking at it, we're also going to look for signs of disease. And if there is disease and you are using the same pot, you need to sanitize your pot and disinfect it. Now, if you look online, people say, oh, use vinegar and whatnot. Vinegar is not an approved disinfectant. Bleach. You want to use a 1 to 10 of bleach, which is about 1.5 cups to a gallon of water. Soak it in that mixture for about 15 minutes. Rinse it out, and then it's ready to use again. Now, you only have to do that if you see some kind of issue with your tree. Although, if you're going to reuse the same pot, it's probably a good idea to do that anyway, just to make sure that you've killed all the microbes and pathogens that might be still clinging to the pot.
Is that going to hurt your tree at all, soaking it in bleach?
You're not soaking the tree, just the pot.
The pot?
No.
Doesn't the pot absorb any of the bleach?
No.
It's what the pot's made out of.
Yeah.
It will absorb the bleach. Because we'll use that same solution, but we're cleaning plastic pot,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yes, we're using that same solution on both plastic, ceramic, mica pots, and it really is according to what you're using, what the pot is made out of, how many times you need to rinse it. Agricultural department says you need to what's called do a triple rinse. After you've rinsed everything off, you fill it with water. Basically, you drop it in a bucket of clean water, dump it out, drop it in a bucket of clean water, dump it out, drop it in a bucket of clean water. That theoretically is supposed to get everything out, but we even go a little bit further than that and do a couple more times than just a
Yeah.
triple rinse. That way I know there's nothing residual, because you have to remember that chlorine is a growth retardant. So you don't want that in there. But there isn't anything else that's going to kill off those different bacterial and fungal diseases. You have to use Clorox.
So you'll see online a lot of people recommend using vinegar. Of course, vinegar really doesn't kill a whole lot. I mean, you cook with it, you can drink it. So yeah, definitely not going to kill pathogens in your pot. But it is acidic, so it can damage your roots if you use it in too high of a strength. So the next thing I'm going to do after I've cleaned my pots is I'm going to put screen in the drain holes to keep it from keep your soil from washing out, and then I'm going to add my tie-down wire. So you saw me cut the wires, and you saw the tree was kind of tied in with them. So I'm going to tie it back in again. And I'm doing that because the tree needs to have a stable environment for the roots to grow effectively. So if your tree is moving around a lot, all these tiny new leaves or tiny new roots and growth that's happening are really easy to break off. So if you haven't secured your tree and it's windy and your tree's moving back and forth, all your new roots are just going to break off. That's bad. So, what's that? Not yet. So what was your question again? What was your question again? I was getting to it. You had a question.
You're going to take almost all that soil off.
Yeah, so I'm going to remove the excess soil, but I'm not going to take all of it out because there are beneficial fungus. It's a fungus, right? Mycorrhiza is a beneficial fungus that that can grow in your tree, and it's actually good. I think you guys buy mycorrhiza soil. Yeah. Yeah, so it helps keep your tree healthy. So it's easy to tell if you've got mycorrhiza growing in your tree, because when you pull your tree out of the pot, you'll see a bunch of white flossy looking stuff all around the edge of the pot. And you want to keep that. So you don't want to get rid of all of your old soil. You want to maintain some mycorrhiza spores so that it can regenerate itself.
You want to clean up that, make sure we get all that loosened up and get all that stuff out of there. There you go.
So are you going to do any root pruning on the top? I noticed you got a couple roots crossed.
I might.
Okay. But generally you don't want the roots crossing at all.
No. So Joanne was pointing out that on the top of this root ball, there is some fairly large roots that are crossing over one another, and typically you don't want to have roots crossing because it's kind of unsightly and it doesn't really look real nice. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, most of this a lot of this is just trunk. So this tree's got a nice nibari. So if you're new to bonsai, nibari refers to the root base that you see here above the ground. And having a really nice wide nibari is desirable in some trees, especially deciduous. However, in conifers, it's not a necessity. Yes, so you can also position and move the roots around. You can also graft new roots on if your tree's missing a spot that's got some nice roots. But that's all pretty advanced stuff. Yeah, you can wire the roots. If you're new, bonsai, you've probably seen pictures of bonsai with wire wrapped around the branches, and that's used to position the branches while you're waiting for them to grow and set into that position that you wired them. So instead of just waiting for them to grow in some way that you like, you put wire on them to put them where you want them. All right, we're getting in there pretty good. What do you think?
I think we're doing all right. I'm looking for where this root goes. This is not going to be anything of consequence. This one.
That.
Yeah, we can get rid of that. Or do
that root right there.
Yep. That's one way to do it. Probably get under here a little bit. Is that dead?
No, it's not. It's actually pretty solid.
Let's give it some freedom. Otherwise, how are we doing?
We got 40 minutes. So if anybody brought a tree and they want to start working on it, you are welcome to get going on it. Or save it for when you get home if you just want to ask some questions about it and the process. What do you think?
Come out a little bit. Shallow enough.
All right, what do you think?
If you'd like to start on your tree, there's people here who can help you. You know, there's some of us older men who will be happy to help you retire.
Older? Did you say older?
Yeah.
You meant more experienced, right?
Right. You're older.
Oh, okay.
You're much older.
All right, what do you think? A lot of this under here is just solid root. So I've gotten probably about, I don't know, pretty much soil in here. This thing's pretty full. So I'm going to say I probably got about 70% of the soil off of here. Yes?
When you're transplanting to a different pot for whatever reason, how do you know how much roots to take? What is a good amount?
Well, so if you look up on the slide, you'll see that it says that you can safely remove up to about 1/3 of the roots. Now, Stephanie raised her eyebrows because she probably safely, yes? Unsafely what?
I've seen those guys remove 50, 75% of the root system, and
Yeah.
they actually do really well. It hurts me.
Yeah. So the key is safely. We can safely, so if you take like 50% of your roots off, don't blame me.
It's all about aftercare and your
It is about
aversion to
aftercare.
risk, okay? So if we're in the February here where it's getting to be 28 degrees at night and you have to do a repot and you don't have a place to store it in a garage or in a cold frame or something like that, you may want to consider postponement. If you want to be aggressive because you want to really force your nibari out on a maple as an example, You're probably gonna make sure that you shade it after you repot it, and maybe do it later in the season. It's all about how you can take care of the tree after the fact. And if it's a valuable tree, I wouldn't be taking 70 to 80% of the roots off. You know, you can see some of these guys and gals doing this stuff, but it's all about risk aversion and how aggressive you want to be. If you have some free material that you dug up and you're not afraid to let it die, go for it.
Experiment away.
You got a $600 tree and you've had it for 50 years.
Another thing is
Find somebody else to do it.
time management. I have many a time had plans in the evening, dinner and such with my spouse, and I get in the middle of a repot and I don't realize how much time I actually need because I've never repotted this tree before. Be careful making plans after you do some repots for the day, that's all I'm saying.
So the more roots you take off, the less it's gonna grow, because it's got a replenish kind of, right?
Well, right now this tree's pretty much dormant, right? So it's not going to be doing a lot of growing until it warms up, and then it's going to take all the energy that it's got stored in the trunks and the remainder of the roots and use that to push out new growth and start building new roots.
It's a balance. More energy from the leaves means more energy for the roots. The more roots you have, the more energy it stores over the winter, the more it can push out on the top. The reason we put it in a pot is to restrict that growth for refinement.
That's what it all leaves off, and it's, doesn't have that sort of.
We're going to supplement that with fertilizers and things like that, but essentially, yes, the more fine roots you have, the better chance you have of uploading of nutrients, the better health of the tree, and potentially the better ramification you can have. You can get smaller leaves because you have more fine feeder roots.
It's too small. It's too big. Do you have something right in between? That one's definitely too small.
Sounds like a special order of a pot to me.
Too wide?
No.
This I've got about 2 inches.
See, you still need to take some off the bottom too.
Yeah.
What does the group think?
Anybody have any comments, suggestions? Do you like the pot? Stephanie likes it because it's the most expensive pot that she brought for me. What's that?
I think that's too big. But it's the only one you got, so you're.
Yeah. It is, if it was like an inch shorter on, even, yeah.
Do you have an inch on either side? Looks like you have an
I've got like 2 inches on the ends, but only like an inch and a half on the front and back.
That's right.
Stephanie says it's right, so I'm going with it.
Move it over to one side and put it off.
Yeah, I'm going to take some more off the bottom.
More off the bottom. See, it'll physically hurt the one up there.
Just, so I'm just going to go hammy on it. And
That's why you need Velcros. It's a lot easier to whack them out.
So you say, you know, I'm not looking for it actually to get bigger than the size of it is, for the most part. So just keep it water and I keep it inside right now under a light.
How under water did it get?
No, I think it's in a good spot. I mean, you can take a look at it if you want.
But yeah, we're gonna pot it, we're gonna repot it, probably with all the, I mean, last year, we got that 80, 90 degrees in May.
Well, that's-
So, you know, you're gonna start it, we don't start it until Tuesday. We start around the first part of July, when we start, we would like to come out and watch.
Yeah.
Watch and see how we do it. It's just, it's all about they don't like to be too wet, but they dry, they die.
So that's the, like, the one, mine's that, like.
Oh, yours is.
Yeah.
But
What's that?
Still, still waiting to repot.
Like maybe 10. I mean, I've only taken off like this many roots. So I got to figure out what in here is keeping it up.
So right now I have it under a light on a timer. Like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to give it like an hour of light. Okay, so I can shrink that up a little bit.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I told him he's going to drill some holes in it. You're going to drill holes in your pot, right?
How you gonna drill it from the bottom?
Stephanie, what do you think now? Okay.
No, you're good.
You know, being able to see this a little more.
Yeah.
That's great, you want to see that, and that can drop down in there. But you want to be able to see all of that.
Got a question for you.
Sure.
You've got a unit that's desperately in need of repotting.
This is good.
5 or 6 years ago since he last repotted.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I don't think it's really that cold enough to go dormant.
Oh, it has. Yeah, it's gone. It's cold enough. You can't tell from.
It doesn't get below 7 degrees.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it looks as green as it did in the summer.
Yeah, no, it's a U, so they always look about like that, the same.
Okay. I mean, sometimes they look a little more brownish in the winter time. This year I couldn't tell anything.
Well, that's good. That means it's doing pretty well, I guess.
Right, it still feels really cold.
I've used that, but I don't like it because if you get a little dirt on it, then it doesn't stick anymore. So I have stopped using it.
So that's going to hold the mesh?
Yes, so I'll show you how this works. So I'm going to stick this into my piece of mesh, like so. And I'm going to stick it in the pot. And I'm going to bend it out so it holds my mesh in. What's up, Dane? How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How's your tree from the show? From the new talent competition?
Oh, it did not make it.
I didn't think it did. I didn't think it would.
I horsed on it pretty hard. I only had a couple trees done, but yeah, that one.
It's a competition, right? So your goal is to win.
Yeah. I had it in the garage in the winter, and by the time winter was over, it was pretty.
Well, the one that I did a couple years ago, it lasted till the spring, and that was about it. Because I cut way more off than would need to survive.
I don't know if you were going to cover it, but as far as like placement in the pot, like I know you don't want it just like dead center.
Right.
There's some like as far as kind of how you balance where the roots and the branches, which side goes.
Yeah. Well, like this tree, it's pretty straight. Doesn't have a lot of movement to it, but more of the trees like over on this side. So I would probably pot it a little bit.
So you'd have the wider side of the pot to the wider side of the tree.
Yeah.
Is there no, it just doesn't make sense?
Your buds are swelling.
I don't have a list of the local pot makers, no. Stephanie could probably tell you since she buys pots from some of them. So are you friends with Sid, Sean?
I'm his boyfriend's roommate.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Bill, do you have sphagnum?
Yeah.
Raw sphagnum you're going to use as a top dresser?
Yeah.
Because your buds are more than swelling.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, so it's gonna go into my solarium. It's not going back outside.
I use the peat moss on it because that'll help to maintain it.
Yeah.
Just get it outside as soon as that freezing temperatures are done so the birds can steal it off of you, otherwise you have to steal it.
So this is just sphagnum, but I seem to have trouble too with the soil washing away on the top of the ponds.
The sphagnum is merely a temporary transplant.
It's like an aid.
Or is that just a watering issue?
No, you need something. You have to remember that your soil is very, very loose. Your new soil is very, very loose, so it's not hanging on to a lot of water. And you've got a lot of exposed roots, and then you have these little guys moving in there. That new Akadama blend is not going to hold on to enough moisture to help balance those little babies. So that sphagnum moss on top here will do that.
Yeah, it was buried in the leaves, so it never got frozen.
Everybody has
No, it was like to here, and it was in like I put like this many leaves flat, and then put the top trees on top, and then packed them around. Yeah. Yeah.
It comes off like in a blob. Strings, you can pull the strings out. And the birds do a great job. You can pull the strings in it and it works really well. And you don't get any casing, so you're not down in here with tweezers trying to get the top stuff
Yeah, it should be.
out of there because you want to get back down to see your Akadama.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd be able to get the dirt off.
You really want that to be a blanket, like, just a humidity blanket.
And you had bonsai.
Yeah, but not my favorite mix.
It was so dark when you were doing that. It didn't look like it from in the back.
Yeah, that's because it's so much of it is broken down. It's kind of turned into dirt.
So last weekend would not have been a good time.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's not outside anymore. Once you
Ooh, did I miss one, or did I? Oh, I missed one.
to do it because you do want to get it outside as soon as possible. That bonsai
You can stop.
happens in the spring when you're down here.
Up to you.
Shuffle.
You can leave it run, doesn't matter.
I keep everything on like a detached box.
What's that? Thanks. Did you learn anything?
Yeah, that's attached. No, it's
Yeah.